Returnal is the latest big PS5 exclusive release, a roguelike that has been getting a lot of attention over its difficulty, as well as the fact that as a PS5 game, it's also got that big brand new price increase attached to it. Yes, here in the States, this title will set you back $70. That's 70. So today, I want to talk about this game, the difficulty drama, and of course, whether or not it's worth the price. Let's actually start with the story. In this title, you play as an astronaut named Celine who crash lands on this mysterious alien planet. And while exploring it, she soon notices another astronaut's body near her crash site. And that body is hers. She realizes that she's caught in a time loop where when she dies, she reawakens at the crash site to begin everything all over again. And throughout the game, you'll find audio tapes other versions of Celine have left behind to get more insight into what's going on, as well as document her descent into madness, really. Also, as if that all wasn't wild enough, there's a house randomly situated in the world that really turns things on their head. Once you enter, the game goes into a first-person view, sort of has a PT kind of vibe, and in there, you'll learn more about Celine's personal backstory. Each time you're able to enter, you'll get a little more info as these creepy scenarios play out. Aside from those first-person sections, gameplay-wise, this is a third-person shooter roguelike. You run through these randomly generated levels, exploring the planet, fighting off the alien inhabitants, and as you do so, Celine will level up as well as find various artifacts and power-ups that make her stronger. The problem is, though, to go along with this story of looping back to her crash site after death, once you die, you lose not all, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but most of the progress you've made, and have to restart at the beginning. In terms of the core gameplay mechanics, I love what's going on here. You're much of the time almost dealing with a bullet hell shooter sort of scenario where most enemies can lob massive amounts of projectiles at you at once, and obviously when you've got more enemies in a room, you're only multiplying that projectile output, so you've got to dodge around all the shit flying across the screen while hitting them back even harder. Controls are tight, movement is fluid. Definitely one of those games when you die, you're going to want to say it's the game's fault, something screwed up, but you really only have yourself to blame. The only thing that took me some getting used to was the usage of adaptive triggers. With this being a PS5 title, the left trigger is used for two things, actually. Pulling it halfway down allows you to do your traditional aiming with your weapon's primary fire, but holding it all the way down shoots its alt fire ability. At first, I didn't like this. My brain, I'm sure many of your brains, just thinks this is a shooter. You pull the left trigger down to aim. So I was regularly pulling it all the way down and using my alternate fire when I didn't really want to be. But after a few hours, I completely came around and actually loved it, especially with that alt fire, since you've got a bunch of resistance at the halfway point to make it easy to just pull it down halfway and not go all the way. So you got to give it some extra force to hit that alternate fire ability, and since most alternate fires are like a grenade or, a big rocket flurry, it makes things a bit more immersive having to give the trigger that extra oomph to fire off those abilities. As far as the more RPG elements, you gain XP from killing enemies to level up your weapon proficiency, and as that levels up, you'll start to find more powerful weapons in line with that level. So at level 1, you're finding mostly level 1 guns, but at level 10, you'll be finding mostly level 10 guns and so on. Higher level guns not only do more damage, they also have more augmented traits. Like you can pick up a gun that has a trait that lets it shoot faster, but at a higher level, you may pick up that same gun and have the faster shooting trait, as well as now it shoots more projectiles. These traits are randomized and can be leveled up as well. When you pick up a gun with a new trait that you haven't seen before, you actually have to kill enemies to level it up and fully unlock it. Like once you pick up a gun with a new trait, you'll see a new little XP bar pop up on the screen. When you fill it up, that trait is unlocked permanently. So it'll randomly show up in future runs fully unlocked, and you won't have to, kill the enemies to unlock it. Apart from that, there's a lot of risk versus reward gameplay, which is common in these sorts of titles. There are these parasites that you find randomly throughout the game that you can attach to your suit, and they'll give you some sort of perk as well as a negative effect. Like some may let you use an item more than once, but once you do so, the parasite will detach and damage you. When you kill enemies, they drop currency that you use to buy items from these fabricators in the game, and one parasite might allow you to collect that currency from farther away because after a few seconds it disappears, but at the same time make defeated enemies leave behind a poison pool that if you run through it, you get damaged. And I can tell you myself, whenever I was playing with that poison pool stuff activated, it was such a killer. I was running into that stuff. You'd think it was magnetized with how much I would run into the poison. So for me, it quickly became like, if I'm going to attach a parasite that gives me that poison pool affix, the benefit better be really good because that poison pool just destroyed me on so many runs. Similarly, things like chests and obolites are the currency in the game, and you can find these obolite crops that you can hit and get a bunch of the currency from, but you can encounter malignant versions of those. They'll have like a purple glowing effect on them, and interacting with those have a varying chance to cause your suit to malfunction. So there's a possibility, a malignant chest could have an amazing item in it, a sick weapon or something like that, but it can also give you this malfunction effect, which could make you like do less damage or have less defense, which is a killer. The malfunctions though also give you a quest like kill X amount of enemies or open X amount of chests, something like that, and when you complete it, the malfunction goes away. So there's also that factor to weigh in, like, hey, I might get a malfunction for opening up this chest, but there's also a chance I can remove that malfunction by just like killing a bunch of enemies, then I also get the perk. So yeah, there's all this risk versus reward managing you have to do to try and optimize your chances of having a successful run, as you have that big setback of once you die, you're back to the beginning. Now, I do want to talk a good amount about how much you actually lose upon death, because I'm seeing a lot of people blow that aspect out of proportion. This was a big discussion with a bunch of game journalists coming out this past week saying they reviewed the game but didn't beat it because it was too punishing, and then a whole debate raged on as to whether or not you should have to beat a game to review it, with of course all the game journalists saying, oh, of course you don't have to beat a game to give it a review and a score. Just like a movie, right? If you watch half of a movie, you're able to give a full informed review of it, right? Such idiots. But yeah, I worry that factor is going to be a big turnoff to people, and it's not nearly as bad as some are making it out to be. Like, for one, there are major upgrades that you get that are permanent. If you die, you will have them when you restart, many of which grant you access to new locations. So like, one is a grappling hook. There are points on every map that require the grappling hook to get up to. They could have a chest up there, could be an extra healing item or something like that, and until you get the grappling hook, obviously you can't get up there, but once you do, you can get up there for every single run you do after that. So every time you come across one of these items, that's a big benefit to all your future runs. Boss fights. Most levels have a big boss enemy you have to engage with at the end and defeat to move on to the next level, but once you beat each boss in the game just once, you'll unlock a pathway or a portal to get to the next level without fighting them again. So every boss in the game, you only have to defeat once, which already, that's a lot more than many other roguelikes give you. And that's not even the biggest benefit. This game is divided into 2 acts. Without getting into story spoilers, there are 6 levels in total that you have to play through, and you effectively get a full-on, fat checkpoint after beating the first 3 areas. Now, that doesn't save like your weapon proficiency, your build, and that. When you die, yes, you'll lose your level, your gun, your parasites, your artifacts, all that stuff, but you will go back to the beginning of stage 4. So if you die in stage 4, back to the beginning of stage 4. If you die in stage 5, back to the beginning of stage 4. If you die on the last stage of the game, stage 6, it's back to the beginning of stage 4. This is monumental, in my opinion, as it's really almost like you're playing 2 different roguelike runs to complete the full game. Again, I don't want to get into story spoilers, but I think that's more than enough that your average player can get through this. Yes, it may take you a bunch of runs, but you're gonna get there. And plenty of other roguelikes are way more brutal than this one. Now, even though like you don't have to fight bosses again and can kind of rush through levels after you beat them once, like you can kind of bum rush to just get through an area to get to the portal or whatever to get to the next area as fast as possible, you're still going to want to farm through the area, like fight the enemies to get the currency, the proficiency levels in that, because when you get to like the later levels, stage 6 for instance, you don't want it to be like enemies can just one-shot you. So death still does set you back a good amount because you're still going to want to mostly play through each level to get to the end. But again, you get to avoid dealing with the bosses multiple times. And that's also why it's so important to have engaging, fun gameplay in titles like this, because you are replaying the levels. At least, yeah, they're randomly generated, but still, you're dealing with the same enemies and that over and over again. So they have to be really fun to fight. The game's got to be fun to play, and Returnal definitely is. Visuals, real quick, this has the full makings of a AAA next-gen title, Ultra HD textures, fast and steady frame rate, which you need. You do not want the frame rate to kill you in a title like this. I did have a few parts where I had some really unlucky spawns where there were just a ton of enemies in one room and the frame rate would drop a little bit in those instances. But overall, I thought it was pretty solid. I love the visuals, the designs of the locales, you know, all these alien ruins. The enemy design, tentacles are a really big theme in this game. So many enemies have these really long, flailing tentacles and they're like flying around through the air. It looks so cool. So as you can probably see, I really enjoyed this game, but that doesn't necessarily answer the question of, is it worth the price? In terms of the overall quality, this is certainly a AAA level experience, I think. Again, the visual design, amazing gameplay, gripping story even. The story is definitely very cryptic. A lot of things I think are left up to interpretation, but part of why I wanted to push forward is to, get more info on what's actually going on here. But I think it's the amount of content that a lot of people are bringing into this question. The time it takes you to beat a game like this varies tremendously. Like some people, it may take 30 hours. For some, it may take 10 or even less. You could technically beat this game in just one straight run and do it in probably 5 or 6 hours. Your skill obviously plays a big factor, but you could also just get really lucky with getting huge damage guns early, having great items to buy early on. Like my favorite item is the lifesteal. Allows you to leech 1% of the damage you do to enemies back to yourself. That's huge. I mean, if you get that in the first area, that's going to be a huge benefit to you. So you can get lucky too. Myself, it took me about 22 hours to beat the game. I took this screenshot of my stats after I beat it and messed around a little bit more after. Okay, wait, don't look too closely at those stats. Yeah, it's true. I died 75 times in this game and then said,
"You want to see me do it again?"
Okay, when you divide it over the 6 levels, it's not really that many times, guys. Okay, don't you dare. I don't want to see anyone calling me a noob in the comments, I swear to God. But yeah, the thing is, though, that doesn't mean there's 22 hours of content here. Again, a lot of that is playing the same stuff over and over. And also there's challenge modes in that can give you more stuff to do, but again, it's more of the same, essentially. And you can apply that to any game that has a hardcore mode where, maybe there's not a lot of checkpoints or, you die really easily. Like if it takes a player extra long to get through a game's hardcore mode, that doesn't mean that that's how much content is in the game. Just because you're killing the player a lot more and making them replay much of the game over again doesn't mean you're offering them that much content. And these types of experiences, again, are something people see more in smaller, cheaper indie games, like a Dead Cells or a Hades. And on top of that, this isn't just a full-priced $60 game. This has that new PS5 exclusive $70 price tag, which I think is going to hurt it tremendously. I haven't seen how the game's been performing, and it'll be a shame if that price tag ends up hurting it, because again, I think the game itself is great, but I see the huge issue for consumers as you're charging more for this than almost all other AAA games. You're asking me to pay more for this new IP roguelike experience than any new Nintendo games. I mean, when Breath of the Wild 2 comes out, it's going to be cheaper than Returnal. And I definitely don't think that was the right decision at all. At most, I would have charged $60 for this game, just so it blends in with at least other AAA games. There's still a lot of sticker shock for these PS5 exclusives being $70, with most other titles selling for $60 since almost forever. I mean, most people, their whole lives, games have been $60. So I think even when we get more big PS5 titles like, God of War Ragnarok, right? I'm assuming that game's going to be $70. And even though that's going to be an entry in a big established AAA IP, I think people are still going to have a lot of sticker shock for that because we've been conditioned that new games are $60 for so long. So with this being a new IP, more niche, $60 is the max I would have charged for it. And with how great the game is, I do think 60 would have been justified. Personally, I don't even know if I would have gone much lower, because I think once you go under 60, you're also dealing with the issue where people look at like a $50 game and like, oh, for some reason they're not charging 60. It must not be as good as a $60 game. So I think 60 would have been the sweet spot. I mean, it does have the perk of there not being many next-gen exclusives right now, but there are also big non-exclusive games that are 60. Like, I just picked up Resident Evil 8, Resident Evil Village for $60. So again, you've got this more niche new IP sitting alongside another established AAA franchise release that's $10 cheaper. I just don't think that's the smart play. And it's not just Returnal. I think a lot of these big games, it's going to be hard for people to justify buying in at full price at $70 when so many other games are still charging 60. So I mean, if you're loving what you're seeing and want to play this immediately, I don't think you'll be disappointed. The game is awesome. But if you're not in a hurry for something new, I think you're better off waiting for the inevitable discount, and you'll be more satisfied with the purchase. But to be clear, once more, I absolutely love the game, but $70 for anything right now, I think is asking a lot of players. Anyway, with that, this video's a wrap. Let me know your thoughts on Returnal in the comments. Are you currently playing the game? Are you enjoying it? And do you think it's worth that $70 price tag? As always, I'm the Shy Guy, Johnny Zakari, and thanks for watching.